The 18K PV is EG4's biggest, baddest, yet easiest to use inverter on the market. At least it was until the FlexBoss 21 came out. But regardless of the competition, even if it's from its own family, this beast might still be the solution that you're looking for. So welcome back to the lab where our opinions cannot be bought. Up until we recently got the FlexBoss, this was the biggest hybrid inverter that we had here at the lab. The good news is the release of the FlexBoss doesn't completely wipe this thing off the face of the earth. It's actually still a really powerful and possibly good choice depending on what you're doing. We've had the opportunity to run it through some testing, find out everything that we like and don't like about this unit. And today we want to share our experience with you guys. As always, we do have some links in the description down below. We also have a couple exclusive discount codes with Signature Solar. You guys can save a little bit of money on this guy if you're in the market. Otherwise, before we jump into everything else, we're going to hit you with a super quick 2-minute spec teardown in case you're not already familiar with the EG4 18K PV. First up, this thing passes the Tiny Baby lift test. Unfortunately, Tiny Baby's injured at the moment, so I can't prove it to you, but he wants you to know that he can for sure lift this thing. Here's a clip of my little dumpling ass squatting it onto the wall. I can, if I can lift it, he can lift it. Moving on. This is a 48 volt split phase inverter, which means it does 240 volts. It's also a hybrid inverter, meaning it's capable of running completely off grid, using grid assist, or even selling power back to the grid. It has an 18 kilowatt solar input. That's where it got its name from. And it's got 3 MPPT solar inputs built into it with a super high voltage range, which basically just allows you to have a smaller cable sizing going into the unit to help you save just a little bit of money. The max amount of AC power that you can pass through this guy is 12,000 watts. It has a 200 amp AC bypass breaker built right into it. So you can basically charge a Power Pro battery in like just over an hour with this unit. When it comes to output, this unit has a continuous output of 12,000 watts. It's also rated to do 15 kilowatts for 5 minutes. You can parallel up to 10 of these, which gives you a maximum output power of 120 kilowatts. When it comes to efficiency, it's rated for 97.5% when you're going from solar to the grid. When it comes to the screen on this guy, this is actually my favorite screen that I have ever used on an EG4 inverter. In terms of sound, the fans make a decent amount of noise. They actually kind of sound like the Dementors from Harry Potter. And when you look over the rest of the build, you have nice locking door locks right here on the side, which is pretty cool. You have some handles, not good for lifting this thing whatsoever. They just pinch you and they hurt. You can leave those off the next model. On the other side, we have the PV isolator switch. You also have your Wi-Fi dongle connection. And then behind the panel right here, you have 2 positive and 2 negative battery terminals. You have your 2 generator terminals, 2 load terminals, 2 grid terminals. You can see all of your PV inputs, and then you have all your communication ports, all your dry connects. Everything is actually super simple and laid out really, really well. Obviously, there's a plastic panel that goes in front of all this to make it clean. This unit works with EG4's app, so you can actually go in there and control everything remotely. It's NEMA 4X weather rated, so it's actually rated to be outside. And the price of this guy right now is $4,848 with our discount code, which makes it expensive, but what it does for the price is actually pretty good. So before we jump into the results of our testing with this unit and all the things that we don't like about it, we're going to start with everything that we do like about it. And the first thing is the oversized solar input. What I mean by oversized is that it has a 12,000 watt output, but an 18,000 watt solar input. So even if your batteries ran completely dead, you could have 18 kilowatts of solar coming in, you could power all of your loads to the max. You could have 12,000 watts fully running, and you still have leftover solar to start charging your batteries, which is super nice. A lot of units, sometimes they come in equal or it's just a little bit bigger. So this lets you have at least 6,000 watts to put directly into your batteries while you power everything, having this thing running at full tilt. And if you're running this thing into the grid and you're selling your power back, you also have the ability, if your batteries are full, to just sell a ton of solar back to the grid, which is really cool. Next up, I really like the touchscreen on this unit. Every other unit has like these little buttons. The 6000 XP screen wasn't my favorite. You could never get all the information to line up on one screen. It'll show you like the input in watts and the output in volts, and then to get the output in watts, the inputs in volts, and it just always bugged me. This screen is so simple. It's a touch screen. You go in there and just enter whatever you want, change numbers, go through all your settings. There's literally a frequently asked questions section in the screen. So it's so intuitive. I never even took the manual out of the box to get this thing going. I literally plugged it in, went on the screen, and I just figured everything out right from there. Something else that we really like is that there's punch outs on the bottom and the back inside this door right here. So that lets you put this thing like they advertise it all the time with the combiner box underneath and then the Power Pro battery underneath that. So you can run wires right through the bottom and hook everything up. But in our case, we have wires coming out of this thing right now because the wires are running out the back. The fan sits this thing off the wall, so there's a little bit of a gap. And with the knockouts on the back wall as well, you're able to actually hang this thing, run all your wires out the back, and it'll just be sitting there really nice and clean, and you don't see any wires coming out of the bottom, which I really like. And being that this thing is weather rated and it's actually able to sit outside, I like that they included door locks. They actually come with a little key so you can lock it. So if you have a neighbor that's a little bit of a peeping Tom and he wants to come over and start fiddling with your 18K, unless you've given him the key, he can't. Something else that we like is behind the door, you have all of your breakers and disconnects built right in. You have your solar disconnect right here. Everything is just there for you. A lot of bigger inverters have this, but a lot of them you still end up needing to buy like the odd breaker or the odd disconnect here and there, mount it outside of the inverter, which is annoying. I like having disconnects and everything right here. This even has a couple more than something like the FlexBoss does. It just makes me feel good when you're working on it that you can turn everything off and you know it's off, you could see it's off. A lot of other stuff, sometimes it's a little bit questionable. I also really like that this is a massive inverter and the idle consumption isn't much higher than the tiny little yellow 3000 watt inverter that they make. This unit has separate grid and generator inputs. Something like the FlexBoss actually doesn't have separate grid and generator inputs. If you're using it off grid, they expect you to run your generator into the grid input. And then if you're using it hybrid, they expect you to have the grid boss, blah, blah, blah. It's a big thing, but this has both. So you're able to have grid power coming in and run a generator in at the same time, which is huge. And the last thing that we really like that we've told you guys before is that Signature Solar is actually a great place to buy solar gear from. They're the main place to buy EG4 products. We've mystery shopped them before. We had a good experience. We've tried to call some other companies' supports and we haven't had the best experience. So we would always recommend if you're gonna buy EG4 products, shop at Signature Solar. They just offer great customer support and they know their stuff. They're really knowledgeable. They're able to point you in the right direction. Especially right now, you're trying to decide between this and the FlexBoss. Don't ask us, just give them a call. And when it comes to these bigger things too, they actually also offer like a remote commissioning support call thing. So whether it's an installer or whether it's yourself that's doing this, you can schedule a call and they will help you commission this when you're trying to set it up on the phone, which is awesome because a lot of other companies give you a manual. First thing that we don't like about this inverter is that it doesn't have the capability to start like a 5-ton air conditioner. Do I care about that? No, but I don't live in Texas or New Mexico. If I live somewhere like that where you need just a ginormous air conditioner, you're gonna need to get a soft start because this can't do it right out of the box. Something like the new FlexBoss, however, can. The RSD, the rapid shutdown, is required for UL certifications to install it in California and some other places. That's cool. They built a button directly into the side of these inverters now, so you don't have to buy like the big yellow emergency shutoff button. But when you use the big yellow emergency shutoff buttons, it shuts off instantly. When you use the RSD button on the side of this thing, it's rated to do it in under 30 seconds. So it's a lot slower than you would actually imagine. And if you were to have a problem, I don't know that it would shut off fast enough. I think that having that emergency yellow button, if you're worried about having the rapid shutdown feature, you're gonna want to still spend the money on the button. It works way better. Something else I just don't like with these bigger EG4 inverters is that they changed the name from the AC output. So like the 6000 XP, the 12,000, that's how much power they output. This is called the 18K, but it's still only a 12,000 watt output, and the output didn't get any bigger from the 12,000 to this one. The only thing that got bigger was the solar input. I understand why they do this. When it comes to the hybrid game, it's not always about how much power can you output. It becomes how much power can you input, how much power can you put to your devices, sell back to the grid. Like you just want to overload solar input into these units, and I get that, but can be a little bit confusing for some people if they see the 6,000, the 12,000, and then they see the 18K. If they don't do their research, they might think it has that output, then they realize it's only a 12,000 watt, whatever. I understand it, but I don't like the way that they halfway through they just switch up the names. Some people are gonna be confused. The other thing that we just don't like here at the lab is that now that the FlexBoss is out, This is still a little bit pricey, and I understand that again, but it's gonna make this a little bit of a weird unit to buy. I still think that there is a specific buyer who actually might just want this instead of the Flex Boss and the Grid Boss and all that stuff. Either way, I would call Signature Solar, explain your needs if you're trying to figure it out, and see which one is best for you. But it would be cool to see this thing come down in price a little bit now that there is a bigger solution out there. Now, when it comes to buying an inverter, there's a few important things that you need to check. First up is idle consumption. When this unit is on, plugged into a battery, maybe you're not using it, but it's there. There's power there that you can go plug something in and use it right now, but it's just sitting there idling. How much power does it use? We found that this unit uses about 60 to 70 watts. It runs like 1.2 amps usually on the battery, which is honestly pretty good considering like the tiny little 3000 watt inverter was not much less. We also want to make sure that it can do what it says it's going to do. This is a 12,000 watt rated power output. You could run 12,000 watts on this unit forever. It just goes, it just rips nonstop. And it's actually rated to overload and run at 15.5 kilowatts for 5 minutes. Basically just if you accidentally have too many loads on or you just need to cycle your water tank or whatever, it'll do a little bit extra for a short amount of time. So to test this, we have a massive 15 kilowatt heater that we use in the garage sometimes when it's really cold in here. We went ahead, disconnected this from the grid. There was no AC power present. There was no solar power present, just running purely off the batteries. We tried to start this 15 kilowatt unit and it actually did it no problem. Oh, dude, it's working. No way. No. Oh. It was the inverter? Oh no, it was the battery. It turned on, it ran. The only thing that limited us was the battery. Like the Power Pro battery doesn't want to run that big of a load for more than 30 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever it was. It was just a quickie from the Power Pro, but the battery was the limiting factor. This thing didn't throw an error code, like it didn't care. It had no problem doing what we were asking it to do. We just don't have 2 of those Power Pro batteries, which is kind of what you should be pairing this with if you're going to utilize the full abilities of it. And not only that, but this thing, I can't speak for every air conditioner. I know like it won't start a 5-ton air conditioner, but if you live somewhere that doesn't have like a desert climate and you just have a medium-sized air conditioner or a small air conditioner that you want to run like we do, the closest surge to that we can kind of run to pretend is our compressor. The first inverter that could ever start this big compressor behind me was the 6000 XP. Even something like the F3800 power station, the Delta Pro Ultra, which have a 6000 and a 7000 watt inverter, they couldn't surge just to start that compressor. It only runs about 2400 watts when it's running, but getting it going is the hard part. So obviously we went ahead with nothing running. It starts the compressor. We added 3000 watts worth of loads, tried it again, it starts the compressor. We added another 3000, so now we have a 6000 watt base load running, started the compressor. We got it up to a 7000 watt base load, surged, started the compressor. So that's literally you running like your oven, your stove, your microwave, some lights. You're going ham, cooking a turkey dinner, and you could still surge to start this compressor, which you could substitute for some sort of smaller air conditioner or something like that. The only limiting factor that we stopped was because of the battery. The battery couldn't surge to keep up with the testing that we were doing. So that's really good. The fact that this thing can run that load and still kick on the compressor, that speaks a lot. Moving on, this unit is rated to put 12,000 watts of power to your batteries, passing it through from AC, like having it connected to the grid. So we went ahead and tested that and it worked no problem. It was actually passing through like 11,400 watts or whatever, but we cycled it a bunch of times on the Power Pro battery and it always just ran full tilt, charged it up in just over an hour, which is really cool to see. The solar input makes us look like complete pussies, dude. We have like what we would call a decent solar array in the backyard. It powers our mini split and the Power Pro, our 6000 XP, but when you move up to something like this, it just makes us look weak. It works, but it just makes us look weak.
You need more panels.
And anything else that you would want to test, like the rapid shutdown mode or the sound or anything like that, I think we've already mentioned in other parts of the video. So that is it. This thing did really well in our testing. I think this unit is a great example of why EG4 is such a big name and has been such a popular upcoming brand over the last few years. Personally, we actually had a really good time with this unit. It's no wonder that all the online buzz and reviews and everything are actually super positive towards this unit. I understand that some people still, now that this Flex Boss is out, might be kind of in the middle, but regardless, I would just recommend that you call Signature Solar, ask them which one might be best for you. We actually just released a first look video at the FlexBoss as we just got our hands on one. We'll leave a link to that video in the description if you guys want to check it out. Otherwise, that is all we got for you guys. I will catch you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out and stay charged.